The Kithari had spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of conquest through dimensional warfare. Their crimson vessels sliced through reality itself, opening rifts that bypassed every defense, every early warning system, every carefully constructed military formation. They struck without warning, harvested what they needed, and vanished before retaliation could find them. High Commandant Vextar stood before the swirling portal, his forearms crossed in satisfaction as the dimensional tier stabilized. Through the shimmering gateway, a blue-green world spun lazily in the void, primitive, unoffended, ripe for the taking. The preliminary scans had revealed a species called humans that had barely achieved interplanetary travel, no dimensional technology, no energy shields, no quantum encrypted communications, perfect prey. The rift is stable, High Commandant reported, sighing Kelvith, her serpentine form coiled around the dimensional anchor controls, resonance frequency locked. The breach should remain open for standard harvest duration. Vextar's mandibles clicked in approval. The humans had something the Kithari Empire desperately needed: rare earth elements in abundance, and more importantly, a biologically compatible protein matrix that can sustain their rapidly expanding population. Their own worlds were depleted, strip-mined of barren rock over millennia of expansion. Begin the harvest protocol, Vextar commanded. Deploy the Devourers first. Let them clear any military resistance, then follow with the collection swarms. The first wave of Kithari warforms poured through the rift, massive, biomechanical constructs that stood 30 meters tall, their metallic carapaces gleaming with integrated weaponry. Behind them came clouds of smaller drones, designed to strip mine entire continents in days. But as the vanguard emerged into Earth's solar system, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No panic transmissions flooded the electromagnetic spectrum. No desperate military vessels scrambled to intercept. No pleading broadcasts begged for mercy or attempted negotiation. The blue world simply continued its rotation, serene and silent, as if 10,000 Kithari war machines hadn't just materialized. In its backyard, sighing Kelvith, Vextar's voice carried a note of unease. Confirm the dimensional coordinates. Are we certain this is the correct target system? Coordinates confirmed. High Commandant, this is the system designated Sol 3. Preliminary scans showed extensive electromagnetic activity, signs of industrial civilization, population centers. Then where is their response? Vextar's forearms spread wide in frustration. Even the most primitive species react to our emergence. They broadcast warnings, scramble their pathetic warships, attempt communication. This silence, it is unprecedented. On the tactical display, the Kithari forces continued their approach to Earth. But something was wrong with the readings. Where their sensors should have detected bustling population centers, they found nothing. Not dead cities, not abandoned ruins, but an absence that defied explanation. It was as if the entire planet had simply chosen to ignore their existence. High Commandant, tactical sign Brelinox interrupted, his 6 eyes blinking in rapid sequence, a sign of distress among his species. Our forward scouts are reporting anomalies. Define anomalies. They cannot locate the human population centers. The electromagnetic signatures that drew us here, they've ceased. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply stopped. Vextar moved to the primary viewing portal, gazing through the dimensional rift at the deceptively peaceful world beyond. In 3 centuries of conquest, across a dozen dimensions, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans hadn't fled their primitive technology, couldn't have evacuated an entire world. In the time it took to establish the rift, they hadn't hidden. No species had stealth technology that could fool Kithari sensors. So where were they? Maintain approach. Vector, he decided. Deploy additional reconnaissance swarms. I want every square meter of that world scanned. The humans are there. They must be. Perhaps they possess some form of defensive protocol we haven't encountered. But even as he gave the orders, Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Doubt. The silence wasn't the quiet of the dead or the hush of the hiding. It was the stillness of something waiting, something patient, something that had been expecting them all along. The first Kithari harvester touched down in what their scans identified as the ruins of New Geneva's sprawling metropolis that should have housed 12 million humans. Instead, Harvester Prime Colvix found empty streets, abandoned vehicles, and buildings that seemed to have been evacuated with impossible precision. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of where an entire population had vanished. Perimeter secure, reported his tactical specialist, drone controller Yithmer. No hostiles detected, no life signs. The infrastructure appears intact, but unused. Kovacs extended his sensory rays, tasting the air through chemical receptors. The atmosphere carried traces of recent human habitation exhaust from their primitive combustion. Engines, industrial pollutants, organic waste. But the signatures were fading, as if the city had been abandoned exactly when the rift opened. High Commandant. He transmitted back through the dimensional link. The human population has been evacuated. Complete evacuation. This level of coordination suggests the transmission cut off as the street beneath Harvester Prime's massive feet exploded upward. Kovacs' war form staggered as something erupted from the underground infrastructure. Not the crude missiles or chemical explosives they expected from a primitive species, but streams of molten metal that moved with impossible precision. The superheated projectiles punched through his outer carapace like tissue paper, sending feedback screams through his neural links. Contact, Yithmer shrieked, his own form already adapting. Biomechanical limbs reconfiguring into defensive arrays. Unknown weapons. Unknown, the second volley came from all directions simultaneously. Every storm drain, every sewer grate, every subway entrance in a 6-block radius erupted with streams of weaponized plasma. But these weren't random attacks. Each shot was perfectly calculated, targeting weak points in Kithari anatomy that should have been unknown to any human database. Kovacs' tactical mind raced even as his body burned. The humans had studied them, somehow, impossibly. They had obtained detailed intelligence on Kithari physiology and developed weapons specifically designed to counter their biomechanical advantages. All units, evasive maneuvers. He commanded, but it was too late. The third wave wasn't plasma or molten metal. It was something far worse, a gray mist that rose from the streets themselves, flowing like liquid but spreading like gas. Where it touched Kithari war forms, biomechanical systems simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged. They simply ceased to function, as if their fundamental operating principles had been selectively nullified. Nanological warfare. Yithmer gasped, his voice distorting as the gray mist reached his vocal processors. They have nanological. How is this possible? Their technology level was a lie, Kovacs realized, even as his own systems began shutting down. The electromagnetic signatures, the primitive infrastructure, all of it was camouflage. The humans wanted us to come. Through his failing optical arrays, he glimpsed movement in the abandoned buildings, figures in sleek, form-fitting armor that seemed to bend light around them, carrying weapons that hummed with contained energy. Not the crude projectile weapons of a primitive species, but technology that rivaled their own. The figures didn't speak, didn't broadcast ultimatums or demands for surrender. They simply executed their tactical plan with mechanical precision, advancing through the gray mist unaffected, targeting every remaining Kithari position with devastating accuracy. Kovacs' last transmission before his communication systems failed was a desperate warning. High Commandant, retreat. The humans, they knew we were back in the command vessel. Vexstar watched in horror as his screens filled with flatline readings. An entire Harvester brigade, gone in less than 4 minutes. Not defeated through superior numbers or overwhelming firepower, but surgically dismantled by an enemy that had anticipated their every move. Close the rift, he commanded. Emergency protocols. Seal the dimensional breach. Unable to comply. Cyan Kelvith reported, her voice tight with panic. The dimensional anchor is. The readings are impossible. Something is interfering with the quantum field generators. On the main display, new contacts appeared. Ships rising from Earth's surface, not the crude chemical rockets their intelligence had predicted, but sleek vessels that moved without visible propulsion. Their hulls gleaming with the same strange armor as the ground forces, and they were fast, impossibly fast. Those acceleration curves, tactical Cyan Brelinox whispered. Nothing biological should survive those G-forces. They're moving at 300 gravities without inertial compensation technology. What are these? Humans, Vexstar. Watch the human vessels approach with growing dread. The silence made perfect sense now. Earth hadn't responded to their arrival because Earth had been waiting for them. How long? Months? Years? How long had the humans known about dimensional technology, about the Kithari Empire, about the inevitable day when the rift would open? All forces, prepare for combat, he commanded. But his voice lacked its usual confidence. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, High Commandant Vextar faced an enemy that had seen him coming. The human ships struck the Kithari formation like surgical instruments wielded by a master surgeon. Admiral Corvin Drakmor, commanding the test Retribution, watched from his bridge as the first wave of Earth's defenders tore through the alien vanguard. With terrifying efficiency, target their biomechanical nodes, he ordered, his voice calm. Despite the chaos erupting around them, remember these things adapt. Kill them fast, or they'll learn to counter everything we throw at them. The bridge crew worked in perfect synchronization, their enhanced neural interfaces allowing them to process tactical data at superhuman speeds. Lieutenant Commander Zaravos, her cybernetic implants glowing pale blue, coordinated the fleet's movements with the ground forces still engaged in New Geneva. Sir, Omega Squad reports complete neutralization of Harvester Prime's brigade. She reported, no Kithari survivors. Nanite protocols prevented adaptation cycles. Good. Signal Fleet Admiral Reese initiate Phase 2. Voss hesitated. Sir, are you certain? Once we deploy the Prometheus array, execute the order, Commander. Across Earth's fleet, weapons systems that had been decades in development came online. The Prometheus array humanity's answer to dimensional warfare began charging with power, drawn from the planet's fusion core networks. But Drakmor knew they were walking a razor's edge. The array could seal the dimensional rift, but only if they could maintain tactical superiority long enough for the charging sequence to complete aboard the Kithari command vessel. Vextar watched his forces crumble with growing desperation. The humans fought like nothing he had encountered, not with the wild fury of primitive species or the cold logic of purely technological civilizations, but with something far more dangerous, calculated brutality backed by impossible preparation. Deploy. The apex hunters, he commanded, his mandibles clicking in agitation. If the humans want a real war, we'll give them one. The apex hunters were the Kithari Empire's most devastating weapon biomechanical monstrosities that stood 60 meters tall, each one a perfect fusion of organic adaptability and technological superiority. Their carapaces could reconfigure in real time to counter any threat. Their weapon systems could analyze and duplicate any energy signature they encountered. 6 of them launched toward Earth's surface, their massive forms cutting through the human fleet like sharks through schools of fish. Multiple contacts, massive energy signatures. Lieutenant Commander Voss called out, her voice tight with alarm. Sir, those things are. The first apex hunter opened fire. Its beam weapons, reverse-engineered from a dozen conquered civilizations, lanced through space with devastating accuracy. The human destroyer Vengeance simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a millisecond flash of coherent energy. The second beam caught the cruiser Defiance amidships, cutting the vessel in half. All units, scatter formation, Drakmor commanded. Don't let them get a clear shot. But the apex hunters were already adapting, their targeting systems analyzed, the human fleet's evasion patterns, their biomechanical processors calculating optimal intercept vectors with terrifying speed. The space around Earth became a deadly maze of energy beams and plasma bursts, as humanity's most advanced warships fought for their lives against enemies that learned from every exchange. On the surface, the situation was even more dire. The 3 apex hunters assigned to ground assault had landed in major population centers, or what had been population centers before humanity's strategic evacuation. Their adaptive armor shrugged off the nanite attacks that had devastated the smaller Kithari forces, their quantum analysis systems quickly developing countermeasures. Colonel Marcus Thorne, commanding the 7th Enhanced Infantry Division, watched from his command bunker as one of the monsters carved through downtown Berlin. Like a living earthquake, every weapon they threw at it, plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, even tactical nuclear charges, was absorbed, analyzed, and countered. Within minutes, it's learning to fast, he reported to Fleet Command. Every time we hit it with something new, it adapts. We need. His transmission was cut off as the apex hunter's counterstrike reduced his position to molten slag. The monster had traced his communication beam back to its source and responded with a precisely targeted antimatter burst. But Thorne had bought them something precious, data. The creature's adaptation cycle took 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Not instantaneous, there was a window. Admiral Drakmor processed this information as the Retribution rolled desperately to avoid another apex hunter's beam sweep. Around him, his fleet was dying, The humans had planned for a conventional Kithari assault, not these adaptive nightmares that could counter any technology within minutes of exposure. Commander Voss, he said quietly, signal all units, prepare. For final protocol, Voss went pale beneath her cybernetic implants. Sir, the casualties will be acceptable if it saves our species. Dragmore finished. The Prometheus array needs another 4 to 7 minutes to reach full charge, whatever it takes. We hold this line. Across the fleet, human crews received their orders with grim determination. The final protocol was a last resort, a coordinated assault that would cripple the Apex hunters, but cost them nearly half their remaining forces. Ships would ram the biomechanical giants. Crews would detonate their fusion cores at point-blank range. Infantry units would storm the monster's sensory rays in suicidal charges, designed to overwhelm their adaptation cycles through sheer volume of simultaneous attacks. It was brutal. It was desperate. It was entirely human. All units, Dragmore, transmitted, his voice carrying across every remaining Earth vessel. Remember what we're fighting for. They came to harvest us like cattle. Show them why that was a mistake. The charge began. The human fleet threw itself at the Apex hunters with suicidal determination. That sent shock waves through the Kithari command structure. High Commandant Vexstar watched in disbelief as the destroyer Hammerblow rammed directly into Apex Hunter Prime's thoracic section, its fusion core detonating on impact. The explosion vaporized both vessels, but not before the human ship's sacrifice created a 3-second window of vulnerability. In that window, 12 other human ships opened fire simultaneously on the same target point. Apex Hunter Prime's adaptive systems, still processing the fusion detonation's energy signature, couldn't counter the coordinated barrage. Plasma lances, antimatter torpedoes, and quantum disruptors struck as one, punching through biomechanical armor that moments before had seemed impenetrable. The monster died screaming across 18 different spectrums of electromagnetic radiation. Impossible. Vexstar hissed. The Apex Hunters are perfect weapons. They cannot be. They adapt to single-source attacks. Tactical Scion Brellinox interrupted, his 6 eyes wide with realization. But the humans are overwhelming the adaptation cycle. They're sacrificing multiple vessels to create simultaneous multi-vector assaults. The processing matrices can't handle that level of concurrent analysis on Earth's surface. Similar scenes of calculated sacrifice were unfolding. Major Elena Vasquez led her enhanced infantry in a desperate charge against the Apex Hunter ravaging what had once been Paris. The creature's beam weapons cut down her soldiers by the dozen, but each death bought crucial seconds of distraction. Pattern. Omega, she screamed into her comp, even as superheated plasma seared through her left arm. All squads. Pattern Omega. Her remaining troops spread out in a complex formation, each squad attacking from a different angle with different weapons. Pulse rifles, plasma grenades, quantum charges, nano canisters, 17 different types of ordnance, striking the monster's sensor rays simultaneously. The Apex Hunter's adaptation cycle, magnificent in its complexity, simply couldn't process that many variables at once. For 12 seconds, it was effectively blind dot. In those 12 seconds, Vasquez's heavy weapons team landed 3 direct hits with their portable antimatter charges. The creature's death throws leveled 6 city blocks, but the cost was horrific. Of Vasquez's original battalion of 800 enhanced infantry, fewer than 60 remained combat effective. The monster had adapted to their individual weapon systems just before its death, turning their final assault into a slaughter that would have broken any conventional military unit. These weren't conventional soldiers. Target down, Vasquez reported, her voice steady despite the carnage around her. Repeat. Apex Hunter for neutralized. Survivors regrouping for next assignment. Aboard the Retribution. Admiral Dragmore felt each human death like a physical blow, but his expression remained impassive. The tactical display showed the brutal arithmetic of their strategy. 3 Apex Hunters destroyed, 2 remaining in space, 1 still active on the surface. Cost: 47 ships destroyed, over 30,000 personnel killed or wounded. But they were winning, sir, Lieutenant Commander Voss reported. Prometheus array at 68% charge. Estimated 23 minutes to full power. Signal. The reserve fleet. Dragmore ordered. Begin Phase 3. High Commandant Vexstar's mandibles clicked in frustrated rage. As new contacts appeared on his sensors, more human ships, rising from what his intelligence had identified as empty oceans, massive vessels that had been hiding beneath the waves, their hulls shimmering with stealth technology that had rendered them invisible until this moment. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. Our intelligence indicated a primitive civilization with limited spacefaring capability. Our intelligence was wrong, Cyan Kilvith admitted, her serpentine form coiled tightly around her control station. "High Commandant, I'm detecting energy signatures, consistent with dimensional manipulation technology. These humans, they have capabilities that rival our own. The revelation sent us through Vextar's circulatory system. If the humans possessed dimensional technology, they could have been studying the Kithari Empire for decades, possibly centuries. Every military doctrine, every tactical formation, every weakness of their biomechanical warriors could have been cataloged and countered. Recall all remaining forces," he ordered. "Prepare for emergency dimensional transit. We need to warn." The homeworlds, unable to comply, Kelvith reported, panic creeping into her voice. "The dimensional rift is destabilizing. Something is interfering with the quantum field matrix. If we don't maintain current position to stabilize the breach, the backlash could strand us in this dimension permanently." Vextar realized the trap with crystalline clarity. The humans hadn't just prepared to repel a Kithari invasion, they had prepared to ensure that the invading force could never report back. The dimensional interference wasn't an accident. It was a carefully constructed prison. On the surface, the last apex hunter had adapted to conventional weapons and was systematically hunting down the remaining human ground forces. But Colonel Sarah Okafor, commanding the African Defense Grid, had one final card to play. "Activate the Continental Arrays," she ordered, her scarred face grim in the bunker's emergency lighting. "Full power to all installations across the African continent." Massive structures that the Kithari had dismissed as primitive mining operations began to hum with barely contained energy. The mining equipment was actually the largest weapons system ever constructed by human civilization, a network of electromagnetic pulse generators designed specifically to disrupt biomechanical neural pathways. The pulse, when it came, was visible from orbit as a blue-white flash that temporarily blinded every optical sensor on the planet. The apex hunter, caught in the center of the continental-scale electromagnetic storm, convulsed as its biomechanical systems overloaded and failed. It died not with weapons fire, but with the involuntary muscle spasms of a creature whose nervous system had been thoroughly fried. But the cost of the weapon's activation was enormous. Every piece of electronic equipment across 3 continents went dark. Millions of humans who had been evacuated to underground shelters suddenly found themselves cut off from communication, from life support, from any hope of coordinated action. They were winning the war, but each victory brought them closer to losing their civilization. Prometheus array at 86%, Voss reported. 14 minutes to firing solution. Trackmore nodded grimly. The hardest part was yet to come. The final battle began when Fleet Admiral Captain Reese emerged from the quantum shadow of Luna, commanding the full might of humanity's hidden armada. 200 vessels that had never appeared on any official registry, armed with weapons that violated a dozen treaties Earth had never signed, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Unknown vessels. "This is High Commandant Vextar of the Kithari Imperial Fleet," came the transmission across multiple spectrums. "You are interfering with a legal harvesting operation. Under the authority of, this is Fleet Admiral Reese," came the cold reply. "You opened a rift to our world uninvited. Consider this our formal response." The human fleet opened fire as the space around Earth's moon erupted into chaos, as the largest naval engagement in human history began. Vextar's remaining Kithari forces, still numbering in the thousands despite their losses, met the human charge with weapons that had conquered dimensional empires, biomechanical dreadnoughts that could reconfigure their entire structure mid-battle, clashed with human vessels whose hulls seemed to drink in energy weapons like hungry things. Admiral Drakmore, still commanding the surviving elements of the first wave, coordinated his battered ships with Reese's fresh fleet in a complex dance of destruction. The Retribution, her hull scarred by a dozen near misses, slipped through the Kithari formation like a knife between ribs. "Target the command vessel," Drakmore ordered. "All remaining ships converge on the dimensional nexus. If we can cripple their ability to maintain the rift." His words were cut off as a Kithari biocruiser materialized directly above them. its adaptive hull already reconfiguring to counter the Retribution's weapon systems. Lieutenant Commander Voss barely had time to scream a warning before the alien vessel's neural lances punched through their shields. The bridge exploded in sparks and flame. Voss's cybernetic implants overloaded, sending her into convulsions as alien neural patterns tried to rewrite her enhanced brain. Half the command crew died instantly as the neural attack found their augmented nervous systems. All hands, abandon ship, Drakmor ordered, but even as the words left his lips, he was already moving toward the manual control station. Someone had to keep the Retribution on target long enough for the other ships to exploit the opening. His sacrifice would create the ship's AI, its processors damaged by the neural attack. Spoke in a distorted voice. Admiral, fusion core breach in progress. Estimate 90 seconds to catastrophic failure, then we'd better make them count. Drakmor replied, his hands flying over manual controls as he aimed the dying ship directly at the Kitheri command vessel. Meanwhile, Fleet Admiral Reese was learning the true horror of fighting an adaptive enemy. Her flagship, the massive dreadnought Terra's Wrath, had been trading fire with the Kitheri biofortress for 6 minutes and the alien vessel was winning. Each exchange saw the enemy's weapons grow more effective, its defenses more sophisticated. Ma'am, we're losing primary power on decks 7 through 12, reported her tactical officer. Commander Hayes, the biomechanical viruses are spreading through our systems faster than we can purge them. Signal the Manchester and Beijing. Reese ordered, ramming speed. Target the biofortress's core section. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. The two heavy cruisers acknowledged without hesitation, their crews already implementing the final protocol. As they accelerated toward their target, every other human ship in range opened fire on the biofortress, not trying to destroy it, but to overwhelm its adaptive systems long enough for the ramming ships to reach their target. The Manchester struck first, her reinforced bow punching through biomechanical armor that flowed like liquid to absorb the impact. But Captain Morris had prepared for the shaped charges. Throughout his ship's superstructure detonated simultaneously, turning the entire vessel into a massive fragmenting projectile that shredded the biofortress's internal structure. The Beijing followed seconds later, her fusion core already in controlled overload. The explosion that followed lit up the space between Earth and Luna like a second sun. When the glare faded, both ships were gone, along with the Kitheri biofortress and 3 smaller escort vessels. But the cost was becoming unsustainable. In the 23 minutes since the battle began, humanity had lost over half its fleet. The survivors were running low on ammunition, their hulls perforated by alien weapons, their crews decimated by neural attacks and biomechanical viruses. High Commandant Vextar, commanding from his heavily shielded bio-dreadnought, felt victory within his grasp despite the losses. The humans fought with unprecedented ferocity, but they were still just one species. Trapped in a single dimension, his empire spanned realities. Prepare dimensional reinforcement protocols. He ordered, open secondary rifts, call in the 4th fleet from the Andraxian dimension. These humans want a real war, let's give them one that will be remembered for millennia. But as Cyan Kelveth began the complicated process of tearing new holes in reality, her sensors detected something that chilled her serpentine blood. The human energy weapon that had been charging throughout the battle was almost ready to fire. Hi, Commandant, she reported, her voice tight with fear. The dimensional interference is intensifying. The humans have a weapon that... Her words were cut off as the Prometheus array, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, finally reached full charge. The weapon that humanity had built in absolute secrecy, powered by the combined fusion output of 17 different stellar installations, prepared to fire its first and only shot. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the Ray's chief architect, spoke quietly into her communication link. All human vessels, clear the firing corridor. Prometheus array is hot. Repeat, all vessels clear the line of fire. She paused, looking at the tactical display that showed the scattered remnants of humanity's fleets, still fighting desperately against impossible odds. This is for everyone we've lost, she whispered and pressed the firing key. The Prometheus array's discharge was visible across half the solar system, a beam of coherent dimensional energy that struck the Kitheri rift like the fist of an angry god. The weapon, humanity's most closely guarded secret, had been decades in development and represented the combined scientific achievement of Earth's greatest minds. It was designed for one purpose, to sever dimensional rifts so completely that they could never be reopened. High Commandant Vextar watched in horror as his lifeline to the Kitheri Empire simply ceased to exist. The dimensional breach didn't collapse, it was surgically excised from reality itself, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. His secondary rift generators, preparing to call reinforcements from across the dimensional empire, sparked and died as the ray's resonance cascade disrupted every quantum field in the local area. Impossible, he whispered, his forearms trembling. No single species could develop dimensional warfare technology without help. Fleet Admiral Reese's voice cut across the communication channels, cold and precise. Did you really think you were the first to find us? The revelation struck the Kitheri commander like a physical blow. If the humans had been contacted by other dimensional species, if they had been preparing for this moment for decades or even centuries. The Venari, sighing, Kelvith gasped from her position at the sensor array. High Commandant, I'm detecting Venari energy signatures in their weapon systems. The humans have formed an alliance. Vextar's mandibles clicked in desperate calculation. The Venari were the Kitheri Empire's greatest enemies, a species of biomechanical entities that had been waging dimensional warfare against them for millennia. If they had chosen the humans as their proxies in this reality, all remaining units, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of impending doom, prepare for final assault. Target their homeworld directly. If we cannot return to report our findings, we will ensure there are no humans left to threaten the Empire. The Kitheri fleet, reduced now to fewer than 300 vessels, began their death charge toward Earth, but they found their path blocked by the remnants of humanity's defenders, barely 60 ships, most of them damaged, all of them running on skeleton crews. Admiral Drakmor, still somehow alive aboard the dying Retribution, coordinated the final defense from a bridge lit only by emergency power. Lieutenant Commander Voss, her cybernetic implants burned out by the neural attack, worked at manual controls with blood streaming from her damaged eye sockets. Sir, she reported, her voice steady despite her injuries. All remaining ships report, ready for final engagement. We've got enough firepower left for one coordinated volley. Then we'd better make it count. Drakmor replied. He opened communications to every surviving human vessel. All ships, this is Admiral Drakmor. The enemy is making their final push toward Earth. We are all that stands between them and our homeworld, our families, our future. He paused, looking at the tactical display that showed impossible odds: 300 alien warships against their pitiful handful of survivors. Double quotes. Today, we make our stand. Today, we show the universe what it means to threaten humanity. All ships, engage at will. Give them hell. The final battle was brief and terrible. Human ships threw themselves at the Kitheri formation with desperate courage. Their weapons systems pushed far beyond safety limits. Their crews fighting even as their vessels died around them. The cruiser Defiant rammed 3 Kitheri biocruisers, her captain detonating her ships at time matter reserves to ensure maximum damage. The destroyer Vengeance used her dying fusion core as a weapon, piloting the overloading reactor directly into a Kitheri command vessel. But for every alien ship destroyed, humanity lost 2 or 3 of their own. The mathematics of the engagement were inescapable. They were being overwhelmed. That's when Captain Helena Vasquez, commanding the stealth corvette Ghost, made a decision that would be remembered for as long as humans traveled the stars. Using technology stolen from the wreckage of the first Kitheri ships to reach Earth, she had been working to reverse engineer their biomechanical viruses. Admiral, she transmitted to Drakmor, I've got a present for our visitors. One of their own bioviruses, modified for human use. I can upload it to their command network, but I'll need to get close. Real close. Negative, Captain. That's a suicide run. Sir, with respect, we're all on suicide runs today. At least let mine count for something. Before Drakmor could respond, the Ghost vanished from sensors, her stealth systems engaged. Vasquez piloted her small ship through the chaotic battle, slipping between Kitheri vessels like a shadow, her modified virus ready to upload the moment she could penetrate their quantum-encrypted command network. She found her opening when High Commandant Vextar's biodreadnought opened its communication, raised to coordinate the final assault on Earth. The Ghost struck like a dart, her hull breaching the alien vessel's communication node just long enough to upload Vasquez's viral payload. The effect was immediate and devastating. The modified biovirus, designed specifically to target Kitheri neural networks spread through their fleet's command structure like wildfire. Biomechanical systems began shutting down. Adaptive defenses failed. Weapon systems turned on their own ships as the virus corrupted their targeting matrices. In less than 3 minutes, the Kitheri fleet tore itself apart. Vexstar, dying as the virus consumed his own biomechanical implants, transmitted one final message toward the empty space where his dimensional rift had been. Beware the humans. They are not what they seem. They are. The transmission ended as his command vessel's fusion core detonated. 3 days after the last Kitheri vessel fell silent, Admiral Drakmore stood in the ruins of what had once been New Geneva, watching human engineering crews work alongside their Venari allies to catalog the alien technology scattered across the battlefield. His left arm was in a regeneration sleeve, and half his face bore the burn scars of the Retribution's final moments, but he was alive. They were all alive. Final casualty reports, sir, Lieutenant Commander Voss said, approaching with her new optical implants still adapting to Earth's daylight. The neural attack had left her with permanent damage, but human cybernetic technology was already compensating. Fleet losses stand at 73%. Ground forces took 68% casualties, total military deaths. She paused, the numbers still difficult to process, for 137,812 confirmed KIA. Drakmore nodded grimly. Nearly 500,000 of Earth's finest, dead in a single battle. The price of victory had been catastrophic, but the alternative total extinction made the sacrifice meaningful. And the civilian casualties? 0, sir. The evacuation protocols worked perfectly. Every major population center was cleared before the first Kitheri made planetfall. That, at least, was something. The 40-year preparation project, the secret construction of underground cities, the development of dimensional warfare technology, the covert alliance with the Venari had saved billions of lives. Dr. Elizabeth Chen approached from the wreckage of a Kitheri biocruiser, her environmental suit stained with alien fluids. As the architect of the Prometheus array, she had become one of the most important humans in the solar system overnight. Admiral, she said, removing her helmet to reveal graying hair and tired eyes, we've completed the preliminary analysis of their technology. The Kitheri weren't just raiders, they were scouts. This entire invasion was a reconnaissance mission. Scouts for what? Their dimensional empire spans thousands of realities. They strip mine entire civilizations, then move on to the next dimension. Our Venari allies estimate they've consumed over 10 million species across the dimensional matrix. Drakmore felt ice in his veins. How long before they send a real invasion? Force, that's the beautiful part, Chen replied, allowing herself a small smile. They can't. The Prometheus array didn't just close their rift, it created a quantum resonance that will prevent any Kitheri vessel from ever opening a dimensional breach to our reality again. We're effectively quarantined from their empire, but not from their allies, added a new voice. Commander HFY of the Venari Dimensional Defense Corps materialized from the shadows, his biomechanical form a disturbing mirror of Kitheri technology. The Kitheri have client species, slave races forced to serve their empire. They will send others. Then we'll be ready, Drakmore replied with quiet confidence. How long do we have? Years, perhaps decades. The Kitheri will need time to find species capable of dimensional travel who are not already under their direct control, but they will come. Fleet Admiral Reese, her own ship destroyed in the final battle, joined the growing group of human and Venari commanders. The question is, what do we do with the time we bought? Dr. Chen's smile widened. We prepare. The Kitheri technology we've captured, combined with Venari dimensional science, will allow us to take the next step. We don't just defend against dimensional invasion, we become the invaders. You're talking about striking first. Drakmore realized, attacking their empire before they can mount another assault. I'm talking about liberation, Chen corrected. 10 million species, Admiral. 10 million civilizations destroyed by the Kitheri Empire. With the technology we've captured and the alliance we forged, we can free them all. HFY's optical arrays flickered with what might have been approval. The humans think like warriors. This is why we chose to ally with your species. The Kitheri have ruled the dimensional matrix for millennia, but they have never faced anything like you. What makes us so special? Voss asked, her new implants analyzing the Venari commander's biomechanical structure with professional interest. Your Species combines biological innovation with technological adaptation in ways that should be impossible, HFY explained. Most species develop either biological or technological solutions to problems. You do both. Simultaneously, the HFY are biomechanical, but they're limited by their original design parameters, humans. Humans rewrite themselves with each generation. Drakmore looked around at his surviving officers, Voss with her new cybernetic eyes, Chen with her brain-computer interfaces, Reese with her genetic modifications that allowed her to survive in hard vacuum. The Vanari was right. Humanity didn't just use technology, they became technology. So what's the plan? He asked. Chen activated a holographic display that showed the dimensional matrix thousands of realities, connected by quantum pathways, most of them under HFY control. Phase 1. We establish hidden bases in uninhabited dimensions, using stealth technology to avoid detection. Phase 2. We make contact with resistance movements in occupied realities. Phase 3. We begin systematic liberation campaigns. How long will it take? Generations, Chen admitted. This won't be a war we'll live to see the end of. But our children will, and their children. Drakmore nodded slowly. It was audacious, impossible, and utterly human. They had barely survived one invasion, and now they were planning to take on an empire that spanned dimensions. There's something else, Voss said quietly. The HFY message logs we recovered. They weren't just scouting for resources. They were specifically looking for species that might pose a threat to their empire. They targeted US because we were developing dimensional technology. They saw us as a potential threat. Reese asked. More than that, Voss replied. According to their strategic assessments, they classified humanity as a reality killer species, one of only 3 they've ever encountered. The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. The HFY, who had conquered dimensions, were afraid of humanity. What happened to the other 2? Drakmore asked. HFY's optical arrays. Dim. They were destroyed. Completely. The HFY learned to fear species that could threaten their empire, so they developed protocols for total extermination. They came here not to harvest you, but to ensure you never became a threat. But they failed, Chen said with satisfaction, and now we know what we're capable of. 6 months later, Admiral Drakmore stood on the observation deck of the test New Horizon, humanity's first dimensional warship, built using captured HFY technology and Vanari engineering. The vessel was preparing for its maiden voyage to a dimension the HFY had conquered. 3 centuries ago, Lieutenant Commander Voss, now Captain Voss, approached with the final mission reports. All systems green, Admiral. The dimensional drive is stable. Stealth systems are online, and the Liberation fleet is ready for deployment. Through the viewports, Drakmore could see the rest of the fleet, one of 7 ships, carrying the combined might of human and Vanari technology. It wasn't much compared to the HFY Empire, but it was a beginning. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Prepare for dimensional transit, as the ships vanished into the quantum foam, beginning humanity's first offensive operation in the dimensional wars. Drakmore reflected on how much had changed. 3 years ago, Earth had been a single world, isolated and vulnerable. Now, humanity was part of something larger, a growing alliance of species dedicated to ending the HFY Empire's reign of terror. The message they would carry to enslaved civilizations across the dimensional matrix was simple. Earth had been attacked, and Earth had responded with silence and steel. Now, Earth was coming to liberate them all. The HFY had opened a rift to Earth, expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they had awakened something that would hunt them across every dimension. Until their empire was nothing but a memory, humanity was no longer just defending their home. They were coming to free everyone else.